A disguised billionaire places an order for a burger. He receives a startling bill from the black waiter. Table 15 does not pay. Take a peek at his face. Manager Kevin whispered his face to the hostess, loud enough for the man in the simple shirt and cap to hear from the door of Golden Burger, the most well-known hamburger restaurant in Atlanta. The 42-year-old Alex Thompson never thought that the very empire he had created would treat him as a suspect. He was unrecognizable as the billionaire owner of the restaurant chain that earned $200 million annually because he was dressed like a construction worker, with stubble and uncombed hair. Melissa, the hostess, gave him that phony smile she saved for unruly patrons. She inquired curtly, "How many people?" before pointing him towards the table against the bathroom wall, which was the most obscure in the place and where talk was overpowered by the sound of toilets flushing. Alex had arrived there after an anonymous tip on the corporate website. Someone reported systematic racial discrimination at Golden Burger on Peachtree Street, his flagship restaurant. As CEO, he could have sent in auditors, investigators, or simply fired everyone. But something in the desperate tone of that message made her want to see for herself. "One person," she replied with an accent she had practiced for days. Imitating workers she had known since childhood in the suburb where she grew up, "The waiter will be with you shortly." He lied blatantly as Alex could see all the employees deliberately avoiding his section. It was then that Jerome Washington, a 23-year-old black man, approached the table with a genuine smile that contrasted with the hostile environment. There was something different about him, a dignity that no uniform could mask, an intelligence shining in his eyes that did not go unnoticed. "Good afternoon, sir." Alex discreetly watched Jerome's co-workers treat him with mean jokes, unintentional shivers and orders shouted as if he were deaf. Jerome apologized politely for the delay, but Alex knew it wasn't his fault. "What can I get you?" Alex ordered a classic hamburger and fries. The young man took it all in with a patience that showed years of experience handling this kind of humiliation. When Jerome brought the order 25 minutes later, much longer than it took for the other tables, her hands were shaking slightly. Not from nervousness, but from something deeper. Restrained anger perhaps, or fear. "Here's his order, sir," Jerome said, placing the plate on the table, along with napkins. It was then that Alex noticed there was something hidden under the napkins, a small piece of paper, discreetly folded. Jerome quickly walked away, but not before whispering, almost imperceptibly, "Read it when you're alone." Alex waited a few minutes, pretending to eat while watching the restaurant's activity. When he was sure no one was paying attention, he carefully unfolded the paper. The handwritten words made his blood run cold. "They don't know who you are, but he does, and he needs her help before it's too late." At that moment, Alex realized he had stumbled upon something much bigger and more sinister than simple discrimination. Jerome knew her true identity, but how and what exactly was going on in his own restaurant that an employee would risk passing a secret note to an unknown customer? If you're enjoying this story of revenge and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out what was really going on behind the scenes of that billion-dollar empire, and how a simple hamburger would become the catalyst for the biggest turnaround in Alex Thompson's life. Alex reread the note 3 times, feeling a mixture of shock and curiosity. How had Jerome discovered his identity? And more importantly, what exactly was going on that required urgent help? He pretended to finish his hamburger while watching Jerome being systematically humiliated by his colleagues. Kevin seemed to take special pleasure in making the young man's life hell. He shouted unnecessary orders, made him redo perfect tasks, and blamed him for problems that were clearly not his fault. Kevin yelled from the kitchen, "You forgot to clean his table, 16. It was a blatant lie. Alex had seen Jerome cleaning that table minutes before. The young man ran back to clean it again, without arguing, without complaining. But Alex noticed something in his eyes. It wasn't submission. It was strategy. Jerome was putting up with everything for some specific reason. Alex decided to stay until the end of the shift. At 10 o'clock at night, when the restaurant closed, he waited in the dark parking lot. Jerome came out the back door, clearly exhausted. But when he saw Alex leaning against a borrowed pickup truck, his eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and urgency. Jerome looked around anxiously and replied, "I thought you weren't going to show up. How do you know who his name is?" "My sister. Kesha works in the finance department of her parent company," Alex said bluntly, causing Jerome to smile for the first time since they first met. "2 years ago, she gave me your photo in a business magazine. I knew instantly when you came here." In disguise, Alex felt a pang of adoration. He underestimated the child's intelligence. "What must I hear from you? Not in this place." Jerome took another glance around. "Kevin records everything with the cameras in the parking lot. Is there another place we could go?" As they conversed on the deserted highway next to the eatery, Jerome disclosed a plot that infuriated Alex. Kevin wasn't only treating black workers unfairly. He was using discrimination as a smokehock screen while stealing from the restaurant on a regular basis. "After you leave, he changes the sales records," Jerome continued, displaying pictures from her cell phone. "She embezzles cash from the register and accuses black staff of making unfounded mistakes. Using this method, she has already fired 4 employees, always coming up with a reason to avoid paying severance." Alex witnessed the proof. Screenshots demonstrating system modifications after hours. Photos of Kevin fiddling with the safe when he believed he was alone. Recordings of him disparaging black workers in order to discriminate against clients. "Why didn't you bring this to the attention of corporate HR?" Alex inquired. Jerome gave a sour laugh. "Given that Kevin has friends at the corporate office, do you think anyone would accept the story of a black waiter who has worked for the company for 15 years versus a white manager?" Alex felt as though he had been punched in the gut by the realization. His kingdom was founded on the principles of respect and equality. Managers like Kevin, however, were transforming his fantasies into nightmares of institutionalized discrimination. "Behind the scenes, there's more." Jerome went on. "Kevin discovered that I was gathering evidence. He threatened me directly yesterday, saying that if I caused trouble, he would make sure I never got a job in Atlanta again." Alex turned to face the 23-year-old who was risking everything to act morally. Jerome decided to fight injustice even though he had nothing to gain and everything to lose. ***, what are you doing?" Alex inquired. "Why take such a big chance?" Jerome stared at the city lights below and was silent for a long time. "For 30 years, my mother worked as an office cleaner. She always remained where she was and never voiced any complaints or protests. She received the same pitiful pay and died. Without ever getting promoted." He balled his hands into fists. "At her funeral, I vowed to combat this injustice whenever I had the chance, even if it meant fighting by myself." Alex recognized a younger version of himself in Jerome at that very moment. He had been poor himself. In his initial work, he had also experienced discrimination. He had also vowed to act differently when he had the authority to do so. However, he had separated himself from the realities of frontline workers somewhere along the route to the top. "I take it that Kevin is unaware that you are his owner?" Jerome inquired. "He doesn't know," Alex attested. "Then we are in a better position." Jerome gave a cheeky smile. "He'll keep treating her like she's invisible, and me like garbage. The fact that he is causing his own death is unthinkable to him." Alex saw then that Jerome wasn't merely a victim in need of assistance. He was a strategic ally who was awaiting the ideal moment to take action. The young man had been collecting evidence for months, recording everything, getting ready for this. What is his strategy? Knowing that Jerome had won, Alex inquired. "Kevin will make the riskiest change of all tomorrow. He will attempt to place the $1,200 from a corporate party on me. Everything I need to catch him red-handed is already prepared. However, I need a witness that I can rely on." Gazing at this courageous and bright young man, Alex reflected on how his own path had started similarly. A low-level worker who decides to act after spotting anomalies. The distinction was that he now had the authority to guarantee that justice was served. "Jerome," Alex added with increasing conviction, "you're not going to face this alone. Kevin couldn't have imagined that two individuals he thought were totally innocent were meticulously documenting every instance of abuse and discrimination. And there would be no way out once the trap was set. Because giving your enemy enough rope to hang himself is sometimes the best kind of retaliation. Alex returned to Goldenberger the following morning with a borrowed toolbox while posing as an air conditioning professional. When Kevin walked in, he didn't even look up. Maintenance personnel were, after all, even less noticeable than dubious clients. In order to complete the preparations, Jerome had come an hour early. He placed a button-sized tiny camera in the corner of the room where the safe was kept, hidden in the staff lavatory. The equipment had been supplied by Alex via discreet contacts, an additional benefit of owning a security firm in addition to eateries. As they feigned a casual chat about cooling system issues, Jerome whispered to Alex, "Today's the day. Last night was the corporate party for Johnson and Associates. Kevin will attempt to get the $1,200 in additional payments removed from the system." Through the partially open office door, Alex observed Kevin. The manager was obviously anxious, as evidenced by his frequent checks of his cell phone and increased perspiration. He was well aware that this would be his largest theft too yet. "Do you think he will attempt to blame her?" Alex inquired. Jerome gave a sour smile. "He had already begun yesterday. He mentioned to the other staff members that I had been acting strangely lately and that I might be experiencing financial difficulties. It's the same strategy every time." Before carrying out the scam, developed the story. Kesha Washington, Jerome's sister, showed in at 2 p.m. for what Kevin assumed was a standard corporate finance department audit. After learning of his brother's condition, she had offered to go on this expedition. As a Georgia Tech accounting graduate who worked in the corporate world for 5 years and was well liked by executives, Kesha was everything Jerome wasn't yet able to have. Family loyalty outweighed any corporate formality though, and she had never forgotten her roots. Herrera, Mr. Kesha, gave Kevin a really professional greeting. "I'm here to check the records every 3 months. I hope everything is in order." "For you," Kevin mustered a smile. "Yes, yes. The rear room contains all of the documents. Please take a look at these." Kevin was unaware that Kesha had brought specific tools to identify digital changes made to point-of-sale systems. For those who knew where to look, the electronic traces left by each alteration were brilliant, but they were invisible to the unaided eye. In the meantime, Alex carried on with her technician duties, covertly setting up surveillance equipment. At key locations, his scheme was more intricate than Kevin could have guessed. It included recording the theft, as well as compiling a comprehensive account of the entire system of corruption and discrimination. "Jerome, at 3:30, Kevin called. Please count the money in the safe for me." Last night, there were some differences. It was just as they had anticipated. Knowing that he was now being watched by several cameras, Jerome went to the safe. He announced each amount permitted to the concealed microphones as he painstakingly tallied the money. Jerome reported $15,342. Through the hidden camera, Alex could see that Kevin was writing something different when he typed down the number. $13,142. A difference of precisely $2,200, which is far greater than the $1,200 from a corporate party. During a toilet break, Alex whispered to Jerome, "Kevin is not just stealing the party money. He's being even more ambitious than we thought. To excuse his theft, he is fabricating a more significant disparity." Alex responded with a coldness that even Jerome found surprising. "He wants to destroy me completely. Not just steal from me, but make sure I can never get a job anywhere again." "That will only make his fall more spectacular," Jerome said, clenching his fists. "Stay on course. Your sister is documenting everything." Kesha had learnt much more than the latest changes. The system displayed a 3-year trend of consistent changes that always matched the shifts of black employees and were always made in sufficient quantities to raise suspicions and support terminations. "Mr. Herrera," Kesha said, inviting Kevin to come talk. "I need to explain a few anomalies I discovered. Could you tell me more about these modifications to the sales records?" Kevin started to stutter. "What is altered? I have no idea what..." You're discussing. Every record is generated automatically. Kesha showed him the computer screen and said, "Interesting. Because this demonstrates that only last week, someone manually changed 17 transactions using her administrator password." Kevin's cheeks flushed. There must be a system error of some sort. I've never had a worker use his password without permission. Who within the staff would be able to obtain his personal password? Kesha inquired naively. Kevin gave Jerome his whole attention. While some of the staff members here aren't as reliable as they appear to be, particularly those that are struggling financially, it was just the response they were hoping for. By fabricating a racial story that would be disastrous if it were made public, Kevin was burying himself. Through the monitors he had fitted in the van parked outside, Alex kept an eye on everything. High-resolution recordings were being made of every phrase, gesture, and show of disdain. Kevin went on, Kesha, feeling more assured now that he had a listener. Some of these employees, well, you know what I mean. These things are more common in the community from which they hail. Alex could see that Kesha's hands were shaking with rage, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Mr. Herrera, what kind of things? Making up justifications, falsifying records, and petty theft. Kevin, especially that Jerome, leaned forward in a conspiratorial manner. He must be the cause of the disparities. It's likely that he picked up these skills from his upbringing. Jerome required all her self-control not to blow up as she listened to everything through the covert earpiece. However, he was aware that each bigoted statement Kevin made was an additional brick in his own prison wall. Indeed, said Kesha coolly. Kevin grinned, believing he had persuaded the auditor. Those are very serious accusations. It would be terrible if we discovered that an employee was stealing from the company. You know how it is. Exactly, especially when it comes to someone the company gave a chance to. Despite Kevin made his last move at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. With Kesha still there as a witness, he summoned Jerome into the office in front of other staff members. I have a really severe situation to tell you about, Jerome. Kevin started off pretending to be asleep. Significant inconsistencies in the cash register, invariably during his shifts, have been found by the audits. Jerome pretended astonishment. What sort of differences exist? Just this week, $2,200 has been lost. Kevin was clearly dishonest. Regretfully, he is implicated by every piece of evidence. Other staff members gathered around, some of them visibly astonished, while others were obviously aware that it was a falsehood but were hesitant to say anything. Jerome objected. I would never steal anything. With the appropriate outrage of someone who was aware that he was being filmed. The police will be called, Kevin declared abruptly. At that point, Alex came out as himself. I can't let a thief keep working here. With a look that caused Kevin to automatically back off, he walked over to the group and turned off the air conditioner he was feigning to fix. Alex responded, sorry to interrupt, with a tone of authority that was out of character for his business attire. Kevin impatiently brushed him off, saying, but I think there's a misunderstanding here. You're just the technician. This is not her business. Alex grinned. The restaurant's air seemed colder because of the icy smile. This is actually her business, Kevin. In what way? Exasperated, Kevin inquired. After cautiously pulling out his wallet and presenting her ID, Alex responded, because this business is owned by me, Alex Thompson, and you just committed the most costly error of his life. Jerome's eyes glittered with joy, but he played the part of astonishment flawlessly. Alex could see the pride in Kesha's eyes, despite her professional demeanor. At last, you, Kevin, were able to stammer. Alex concluded, the man you treated like trash yesterday. You sent the suspicious customer to sit at the restroom table. When you were planning to ruin the life of an innocent employee, you failed to see the invisible technician. Kevin frantically glanced about as though he was looking for a non-existent exit. However, there was no way out. Every act of discrimination, every racist statement, and every coin taken had been meticulously documented. Kevin was unable to comprehend that this realization was just the start. In addition to gathering enough evidence to ruin Kevin's career, Alex had spent 3 days formulating a plot so heinous that it would convert that moment of conceit into a public nightmare that would follow Kevin for the rest of his life. And Kevin was going to use Jerome, the young waiter he had attempted to frame and degrade, as the focal point of a poetic and flawless retaliation that would redefine what real justice meant. Alex could hear his own heartbeat because of how completely silent Golden Burger was. Kevin was immobilized, his conceit dissipating in the midday light like water vapor. Kevin stumbled, You can't be," but as soon as he saw Kesha coming, with a tablet in her hands, the words left his throat. On behalf of Thompson Industries, Kevin Herrera, you are fired for just cause. Theft, racial discrimination, and falsifying corporate documents, she stated with professional authority. Alex saw Kevin physically fall apart in front of him. The man who had just minutes before plotted to ruin Jerome's life was now clinging to the wall to prevent himself from falling. Alex calmly said, "Kesha, show everyone what we found." One by one, the evidence came up on the iPad. The most heartbreaking of all were audio recordings of Kevin making racist remarks about staff to discriminatory clientele, pictures of her stealing money from the safe, and recordings of him tampering with digital records. Playing Kevin's distinctive voice, Kesha declared, "This recording is from last night. All of these black workers are the same. They usually end up stealing, even though I give them jobs out of sympathy." He's naturally inclined towards it. The staff members in attendance were stunned. The concerns of those who had long questioned Kevin's actions were ultimately validated. Others who had previously remained silent now understood how serious the situation was. Alex went on, "Kevin, with a composure that was scarier than any yell. You stole $27,000 from this company in just 3 years. On the basis of unfounded allegations, you dismissed 12 black employees. Additionally, you made his restaurant a poisonous place to work." Kevin made one final desperate move. "None of this can be proven by you. These recordings have been altered." After months of embarrassment, Jerome finally spoke, her voice full of a quiet delight. "You forgot something crucial, Kevin." "What are you discussing?" Kevin snarled. For the first time since Alex had met him, Jerome grinned. "Did you install the security cameras yourself to keep an eye on the staff? They also record sound, and the digital files have been available to me for weeks." Kevin was struck with the realization like a lightning strike. She had been destroyed by her own instruments of oppression. Alex went on to say, "Our lawyers have already filed criminal charges against you. The police are on their way to escort you to the station." Kevin frantically searched the area for someone who might be able to sympathize with him. However, the staff members who had once swooned over him out of terror now regarded him with relief and disdain. Thompson, Mr. Kevin, tried a final pitiful appeal. "There is another method. We can resolve this. I'll give the money back." Quietly step down. Additionally, you are not required to make this public. Alex's voice was dangerously low as she walked towards Kevin. "You believed there would be no repercussions for ruining Jerome's life. You could steal from me and believe I wouldn't notice. That you might make my fantasy into a racist nightmare," Alex went on. "Her narrative and photo will be forwarded to every restaurant in Atlanta so you can see what it's like to be treated. The way you treated my employees, her license as a professional will be cancelled. And when you look for a job anywhere, everyone will know exactly who she is." Police sirens were approaching, getting louder by the second. Jerome approached. "Kevin, one last time. Remember when he said I'd never get a job anywhere if I caused trouble?" Jerome smiled. "Well, now he's the one who won't get a job." When the police entered the restaurant to arrest Kevin for embezzlement, he was crying like a child. The man who had terrorized employees for years was now begging for mercy he had never shown others. Mr. Thompson, one of the employees, approached timidly. "We didn't know. I mean, some suspected, but I know," Alex replied gently. Kevin created an environment where no one felt safe to speak up. That's going to change completely. As Kevin was led away in handcuffs, he shouted one last time. "This can't be happening. I've worked here for 15 years, and for 15 years, you abused the trust that was placed in him," Alex replied. "Now, he'll have the rest of his life to think about what he's done." Alex turned to Jerome, who was watching everything with an expression of deep relief. "Jerome, I need to ask you an important question." "Yes, sir. Will you accept his position as the new manager of this restaurant?" The silence that followed was broken by spontaneous applause from all the employees present. Jerome was speechless for a moment, processing the magnitude of the change in his life. But there was still one final revelation that would completely transform the focus of this story. Alex was about to discover something about Jerome that would change not only the dynamics of the restaurant, but the course of his entire business empire. And what Kevin could never have imagined was that her downfall would be just the beginning of a transformation that would prove how true justice is not only about punishing the guilty, but elevating those who deserve to fly high. 6 months later, the Golden Burger on Peachtree Street was unrecognizable. Jerome had transformed the toxic environment into a place where employees smiled genuinely. Customers of all classes were treated with equal respect, and productivity had increased by 40%. Mr. Washington. "More resumes have arrived for the trainee manager positions," said Kasha, now Director of Human Resources for the Southeastern region of Thompson Industries. Jerome smiled as he looked out the window of what used to be Kevin's office. His first act as manager had been to remove the desk from the corner by the restrooms and create a welcoming space where families from all walks of life felt at home. Alex appeared at the door carrying 2 coffees. How is his new regional director settling in? Jerome's promotion had been announced the week before. From humiliated waiter to director of 23 restaurants in just 6 months. Still surreal, Jerome admitted. "Sometimes I wake up thinking it's all a dream." "And Kevin?" Alex asked. "Sued by 12 companies, bankrupt, and no restaurant in Atlanta will even accept his resume." Jerome replied without rancor. "Ironic, isn't it?" Alex saw Jerome going over employee satisfaction evaluations. "Sometimes he shows up here begging for a chance." The young guy had increased pay, instituted anti-discrimination training programs, and fostered an atmosphere where her talent was valued above her looks. As he closed the papers, Jerome questioned, "You know what the best revenge was?" "What? Not witnessing Kevin's arrest?" It was demonstrating that people soar above whatever prejudice one could possibly imagine when they are treated with dignity. Kevin destroyed himself in the process of attempting to eliminate Jerome. Jerome discovered that retaliating for wrongdoing is not true justice. It is creating a level of accomplishment that his adversaries could never attain. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if this tale of justice and perseverance has motivated you.